Welcome to Rewind with Bea, a series that takes a trip down memory lane as we look at Eurovision countries past and present, from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. Rewind with Bea is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever else you get your podcasts. This episode is made in accordance with Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, under the definition of fair use for commentary and critique. Now that that's out the way, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. What do you get when you combine a 75-year-old rapper, a single-person duet, a Eurovision artist more successful than Taylor Swift, and an anti-establishment alt-rock band threatening to get their out on live TV if they won? You get Croatia, who went from being the most successful socialist republic during Yugoslavia's era at the contest to being one of the most peculiar participating countries following their independence, always finding success out of the box and not quite making it when they stick to the norms. The Croatian delegation finally tasted victory independently in 2024, with baby Lasagna winning the grand final televote and finishing in second place overall in Malmö, arriving with a catchy song, a last-minute wildcard entry into Croatia's national final, a one-eyed cat named Stipe, and a dream. Following a crash-out, literally, in 2025, the future looks uncertain for the land of 1,000 islands. But how did they get to where they are now? As always, let's rewind and find out. Okay, you know what to do now. Let's rewind.
From Yugoslavia, Vice Vuko.
Croatia's Eurovision presence started in 1963, 2 years after Yugoslavia debuted at the contest. The Socialist Republic of Croatia provided Yugoslavia's entry for the contest that year, sending Vice Vukov and Brodovi. Despite the 11th place finish out of 16th and narrowly missing out on the dreaded nil point, this entry started a run of successful Croatian entries for Yugoslavia, leading up to Yugoslavia's first and only Eurovision win in 1989, with an entry supplied by, yep, you guessed it, the Socialist Republic of Croatia. Riva's victory in Lausanne meant that Yugoslavia would host the contest the following year in 1990, and due to Croatia fielding the entry that won, their capital city Zagreb was selected as the host city, with HRT organising the contest on behalf of the Yugoslavian broadcaster. Despite a minor mishap regarding the presenters of the contest, the event was seen as a success in both the socialist state and the wider unified nation. And then, less than 2 years later, in January 1992, the state of Yugoslavia dissolved, with the socialist republics of Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina all declaring independence throughout 1991 and 1992. The newly independent Croatia was now free to compete in Eurovision by themselves. However, the EBU had a tiny little problem to deal with first. In 1993, Croatia's national broadcaster HRT was granted full EBU membership, which normally would allow them to participate freely in Eurovision and its associated spin-offs. However, a problem arose when Croatia and their newly independent neighbours Slovenia and Bosnia and Herzegovina all expressed an interest in competing in that year's contest by themselves, as well as the newly independent Soviet state of Estonia, the recently divorced Czechia and Slovakia, and longtime Eurovision observers Hungary, and Romania. Eurovision was already considered too full over the previous 20 years, with Malta, for example, having to sit out several contests throughout the late 20th century due to there being no room for them to compete. 1992 saw a then record-breaking 23 countries participating. So when a total of 14 newly independent nations expressed an interest in participating in 1993, the EBU had to do something in order to accommodate all the nations willing to join the contest. Firstly, the number of participating countries was increased to 25, with the remainder of Yugoslavia, which only comprised of the republics of Serbia and Montenegro, being forced to withdraw by the EBU due to the Yugoslav war sanctions. It meant that there was only room for 3 nations to debut at that contest. The EBU then organised Kwalifikacja za Millstreet, a pre-selection round for the 1993 contest, where the 3 highest scoring nations would qualify for the contest in Millstreet. Croatia and their fellow former Yugoslav states were the lucky 3 that advanced, with Croatia beginning their new era at the contest in a small equestrian arena in the middle of County Cork. Croatia's independent years at the contest had a bit of a rocky start. Their debut entry, Don't Ever Cry by Put, only achieved 15th place in Millstreet, with their following entry, Nek ti bude ljubav sva by Tony Satinsky, placing 1 spot lower at 16th. However, it wouldn't take long for them to start tasting small portions of victory. 1996 saw them break into the top 5 for the first time, with Maja Blagdan's Sveta Ljubav reaching 4th place, a further 5th place in 1998, and another 4th place in 1999, provided by the legendary Doris Dragovic, would cement Croatia as an up-and-coming powerhouse. Whilst the results weren't translating into a victory just yet, they were still high enough to keep Croatia in the contest full time, as along with Malta and Sweden, they were the only countries to have never been relegated from the contest up until the introduction of the semi-finals. Oh Jesus, I forgot about the relegation system. Basically, it was another way for the EBU to combat the high number of prospective nations interested in participating, where the bottom 5 countries were forced to sit out of the contest for a year, allowing for more nations to debut and return. It was abolished in 2004 with the introduction of the semi-final format, and let's perhaps not say more about it. And no, I'm definitely not salty because my nation was relegated from the 2002 contest. Not at all. Anyways, back to Croatia. They maintained a steady string of decent results up until 2008, when that steady string started to get a bit tangled. Croatia's presence in the contest seemed to be going really well. So what happened in 2007? Dragonfly and Dado Topic's entry, Verujem u Ljubav, became the first Croatian entry to not appear in the grand final since the nation's independent debut, missing out on the final by 38 points, despite support from all of their Balkan neighbours. So what went wrong? Was it because the song was maybe a bit too safe and easygoing? Was it Dado's gravelly voice? Who knows? But an even bigger question is this. How the hell did they qualify in 4th place in 2008?
Vidiš, prijatelju, ja pamtim sve i mogu ti reći da između ove i milion drugih pjesama ne postoji razlika.
Kraljevi Ulici and 75 Cents qualified with ease from the second semi-final in 2008. However, this could probably be more explained than their absence from the 2007 final. 2008 saw an unfortunate trend of wacky novelty entries sailing through to the final, Ireland and Belgium being exceptions to that, thankfully. So that likely helped them get through to the final at least. But on the Saturday night show itself, the novelty wore off, as they only finished in 21st place at the close of the voting, propelled by support from Bosnia-Herzegovina and Slovenia. One more slightly improved result in 2009 would unfortunately mark the last time we'd see Croatia in the final for quite a while. But it's not like they stopped trying. Not for the moment, at least. The start of the new decade would prove troubling for the nation. Despite sending girl group Feminem, who previously helped Bosnia and Herzegovina reach 14th place in 2005, they once again bowed out at the semi-finals, needing more than double what they scored to get anywhere near the borderline. 2011 was a more valiant effort, but still proved unfeasible. Daria Kinzer brought Celebrate, but I will always call it Salad Break, to Dusseldorf, but her infectious bop still couldn't get Croatia back into the final. 2012 saw Croatia abandon their long-running national final Dora, following a string of lackluster results, low public interest, and a string of controversies including allegations of rigging and nepotism, in favour of internally selecting their entries, hoping it would change their luck. Their first internal selection brought us Nebo by Nina Badrić, which was a more successful entry than their previous two, finishing only 4 points away from the final, but it still wasn't enough. Another internal selection came in 2013, with Klapa Esmora bringing Miseria to Malmö, but not bringing a qualification with them, in a year that actually saw none of the former Yugoslav nations present in the final. Sadly, that was the straw that finally broke the Croatian camel's back. HRT decided to withdraw from the contest in 2014, deciding that the high cost of taking part and the poor results at the start of the 2010s weren't worth it enough to keep them in the contest. They took a break for 2 years before finally deciding to make a comeback in 2016. But they needed to make it worthwhile and give them a reason to stick around for longer. They needed a voice. Once again choosing to internally select their entrant, HRT put the musical hopes of the nation in the hands of Nina Kraljic, who had recently won the Croatian version of The Voice. The public were definitely behind her, they just needed to wow the rest of Europe in Stockholm. And boy did she do just that. Lighthouse brought Croatia back to the grand final for the first time since 2009. And despite the 23rd place at the end of the voting, it didn't matter. Croatia were back and ready to keep fighting. Wanting to create a sort of sequel to their 2016 efforts, HRT once again looked to The Voice for their 2017 efforts. This time, it was the person who propelled Nina Kraljic to success on the show who they wanted to fly the flag in Kiev, Jacques Hudek. His performance of My Friend went down in the Eurovision history books, as his impressive vocal range made it look like he was singing a duet all by himself, which stunned the jurors around Europe and even the viewers at home, enough to place him a very impressive 13th place, their best result in over a decade. Sadly, however, this comeback was merely a blip, as their next entry, Crazy by Franca, was unable to replicate Nina and Jacques' success, bowing out in the semi-finals in 17th place. However, undeterred, HRT were ready to try and combat this dip in their comeback, deciding to end their internal selections in favour of reviving the Dora Festival in 2019, giving power back to the people. Unfortunately, this power was rather fruitless in its first few years, but it was building up to something massive. Sadly, Rocco, Albina and Mia Dimsic were all unable to bring Croatia to the final in their attempts. Despite Albina qualifying with both the juries and the viewers at home, but not together, which was very peculiar. The Croatian public were very clearly getting sick of the mediocre showings at the contest and wanted to try absolutely anything to get their nation back into the final. Which likely explains how they were so eager to send these men to Liverpool in 2023. Let 3 are an interesting bunch of men. Famous for their anti-establishment messages and provocative performances, They were very clearly what the public hoped would help Croatia stand out in a sea of Western music. Mama Sh was exactly what the band did best, and it showed in spades in Liverpool. Croatia were now back in the final for the first time in 6 years, and they ended up equaling their last grand final appearance with a 13th place at the close of the voting. This drastically changed attitudes in Croatia, but the best was only yet to come, as hiding in the reserve spots for the 2024 edition of Dora was a man who didn't know it yet, but was about to bring Eurovision glory back to the Balkan nation.
In the shadows, where we lost our way, in the shadows, we wait for the day, we found a way.
Marko Puricic, better known by his stage name Baby Lasagna, was previously a member of the band Mantra, who finished 4th in Dora 2019. After going solo from Mantra in 2023, he decided to throw his hat into the Dora ring once again, with an entry inspired by the growing trend of young adults leaving Croatia in the hopes of finding a better life elsewhere, and the anxiety around doing so. And boy was it a bop. The infectious Rim Tim Taggy Dim was initially not shortlisted for Dora that year, but found its place on the reserve list in the event an artist drops out of the contest. The entire population of Croatia has the singer Jaja to thank, as she withdrew from Dora less than a month after her song was shortlisted for the contest, opening up a spot for Rim Tim Taggy Dim to enter in its place. And well, the televote sequence from Dora 2024 really speaks for itself.
Rim Tim Taggy Dim od publike dobio 247 bodova. Sve jasno. Sve jasno, u ovome trenutku imamo pobjednika Dore 2024.
Baby Lasagna had won in an absolute landslide, scoring more in the televote than all 15 other entries combined. Croatia desperately wanted Baby Lasagna to fly the flag in Malmö, sensing something special in his entry. This was the year after CROATIA took Finland to 2nd place and a landslide victory in the televote, so hopes were high for the plucky boy from Umag to emulate that success. Rim Tim Taggy Dim was a fan favourite for a large majority of the Eurovision season, and when it came to that week in May, hopes were higher for Croatia than they ever were before. Tuesday, 7th of May 2024, Malmö Arena, the first semi-final. He danced, he rocked, he impressed, he triumphed. Straight into the grand final without a single bother. Then, the big night. Saturday, 11th of May 2024, Malmö Arena, the grand final. Once again, he danced, he rocked, he impressed, and he was about to triumph. All of Croatia held its breath. Europe and Australia had picked up their phones, and unbeknownst to Baby Lasagna, they voted in their millions.
337 points.
337 points. It wasn't quite a landslide like in Dora, but it was still a dizzying height for the nation. Never before had they seen themselves at the very top of the scoreboard. However, it wasn't enough to stop the jury vote winners Switzerland from claiming the title. Despite not winning the contest, the 2nd place finish for Croatia was in itself a humongous victory. It was their best result as an independent nation, and the closest they'd ever gotten to the trophy. Baby Lasagna arrived home in Zagreb as a hero, and he became a cultural phenomenon in the nation. Rim Tim Taggy Dim charted in 24 nations, and became the highest charting song in Croatia in 2024. It wasn't a complete victory for the nation, but it was one in their own right. So the big question now is, what happens next? Well, sadly, the success of Baby Lasagna was not emulated by Croatia's next entry, Poison Cake by Marko Bosniak, who crashed out in 12th place in the 2025 semi-finals. shoddy live vocals, and a divisive staging were likely at play here. But it was always going to be a tough act to follow such a victory. So the big question still remains. What happens next? Croatia's recent history, ever since they returned in 2016, shows that they find success when they aren't playing it safe. Their 4 qualifications in this period, from Nina Kraljic, Jacques Hudek, Let 3 and Baby Lasagna, all stood out in ways that Franca, Rocco, Albina, Mia Dimcic and Marko Božnjak didn't. If it's not incredible vocals, it's memorable stage shows. And it certainly wasn't taking it easy. The Croatian public in recent years clearly knows what they want to send to Eurovision too. Let 3 and Baby Lasagna both landslid in their respective years in Dora, whilst Marko Božnjak didn't. In fact, he didn't even win the televote that year, he placed 4th, propelled straight to Eurovision by a jury-led victory. This isn't me saying that Croatia needs to send memorable performers with wacky stagings that their public really wants them to send every single year, as that novelty will obviously wear off quickly. We've seen that with the likes of Cyprus and Finland, all crashing out when they've tried to copy and paste their winning formulas immediately afterwards, in 2019 and 2024 respectively. What Croatia need to do to maintain a strong presence at the contest is to continue their winning trend at the contest, but not to continue it to a point where they become a one-trick pony. Add and subtract what works for them and what doesn't. Refine the process year on year, and eventually they will find that niche. We now have physical proof that they can reach the very top of the scoreboard, and one day we might see Eurovision in Zagreb again. As of the writing of this script, HRT have not confirmed if Croatia will compete in the 2026 contest, but it is extremely likely that they will field an entry to Austria for Eurovision's Platinum Jubilee. The ball is in Croatia's court now. It's up to them to determine what happens next. And just like that, our trip down Croatia's rocky but memorable history at Eurovision comes to an end. We've seen the good, the bad, and the unintelligible, but it has truly been an enjoyable journey, for the most part. I hope you enjoyed this journey too, and will rewind back through another country's Eurovision history once more. Rewind with Bea is of course available to stream on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music, among many other platforms. Be sure to follow us on whatever you're listening to in order to stay updated with future episodes. And Rewind is also available to watch on YouTube on the Bea channel. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching us there. You can follow me on Blue Sky, X, Instagram and Twitch. I'm at the Bea channel on all of those platforms. And of course, if you wish to support the show financially, then go to ko-fi.com/besayshi to give whatever you can. YouTube viewers can scan the QR code on screen right now. Rewind with Bea will return very soon for another turbulent trip down Eurovision memory lane. Until then, stay safe, stay kind, and stay awesome. Thank you very much, and slán go fóill.